On December 19th, 2003, inside of a California courtroom at around 5:05 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, jurors would return from deliberation and a court clerk would read guilty verdicts that ultimately found Mexican Mafia member Thomas Wino Grajeda, 52 at the time, guilty on 3 counts of soliciting California State Prison Corcoran inmates to commit murder for him. The deliberation did not take long, and Grajeda would ultimately be sentenced to 75 years. However, he was not going back as a Mexican Mafia member. He was going back along with his fellow family members who were once very high valued and well-respected Mexican Mafia members, all now placed on the disregard status.
I think when I was in the 8th grade, that's when I got hip to the Mexican Mafia through my dad and his associates. Then they took me to a dope fiend house, and they said that we're going to test you. And they just said, kill him. When we hold him, he's going to slam, let him go slam. He's going to sit down on the chair. And when you see us get on the side of him and hold his arms, he's not going to suspect you. You're just a little kid. Jump on his chest with a knife and start whacking him. So I did that, and after that, I think they used me about 2 or 3 more times.
Welcome back. Even after they're locked up, gangbangers keep on committing crimes as long as they can communicate with the outside. One very tough California prison is planning to cut those lines of communication for good. Chris Blatchford has the exclusive details in a report with pictures some may find disturbing.
Inmates move about only in chains. 23 hours a day, they're locked down in cells, all located in small pods, constantly monitored by a heavily armed officer nearby. It's called a special housing unit, or a SHU, known as the end of the road by 1,000 inmates who live in them here at Pelican Bay State Prison. It's a world run by prison gangs, the Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, Aryan Brotherhood, and Black Guerrilla Family. Mostly race and hatred divides them. Insiders say shot callers like the Mexican Mafia's Daryl Nightowl Baca depend on 2 things to run criminal organizations 800 miles away on the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah, communication and fear.
This former Mexican Mafia associate tells it like it is.
Anybody who speaks out against these people is immediately targeted by.
Some of the letters even protected by lawyer-client confidentiality. Prison administrators are working on a new plan to stop it. If you can disrupt communications between the prison gang shot callers here inside the facility and between the prison gang shot callers and their associates out on the streets, you can disrupt their criminal organization.
Come around.
So correctional officers recently isolated about 200 of the worst hardcore prison gang members here into 4 pods located in an area called the Short Corridor. Those inmates include new Aryan Brotherhood member Donald Popeye Maza of Orange County. This former Aryan Brotherhood associate says it's a good idea.
These guys are psychopaths. You know, they're righteous psychopaths. They have nothing but the intent to do damage to other people.
Prison officials say the Short Corridor cuts them off from inmate associates who are normally expected to do all their dirty work.
Hits.
This former Nuestra Familia regimental commander says gang bosses are lost without associates.
The associates are kind of like their limbs. They do all the work for them, basically. Whereas the leadership, they're the heads. They do all the thinking and give all the orders.
Like the Mexican Mafia's Ricky Cruz, doing 52 years for kidnapping, rape, robbery, and burglary. He wrote associates outside prison to smuggle in drugs. Then he was caught receiving cards and paintings dipped in methamphetamine. Also a canister of Gatorade laced with meth. It all had a street value of nearly $400,000. A lucrative drug operation dependent on communication through the U.S. mail.
It's key. It's key. If there's no communication, then there's sort of an anarchy.
Here in the Short Corridor, 4 correctional officers are now assigned to scrutinize all incoming and outgoing mail. Every envelope leaving the SHU And each page of a letter is stamped to prevent inmates from communicating with each other. Lieutenant Ken Thomas.
Staff at the other prison, just like the staff at our prison, are going to open that correspondence up and say, wait a minute, this stuff's coming from Pelican Bay SHU. It's a red flag.
This stamped letter from the Bay was intercepted at Corcoran State Prison. It contained statewide recruiting plans for the Black Guerrilla family. In another case, investigators say imprisoned mafioso Raul Leon, also known as Güero Sherm, has ordered a murder by rerouting a letter through a third person outside prison. With the new stamp system in place, to get that letter to an inmate, the outside contact would have to rewrite the letter on new paper. Gang specialist Devin Hawks.
And just by doing it, would become aware and would thereby be a co-conspirator. We can prosecute.
But since the outset of the Short Quarter Project, Hawks says Mexican Mafia members have increased their use of legal mail by 264%.
Which tells us that they are using this avenue a lot.
Legal mail is mail sent through attorneys. Prison staff are not allowed to read it.
There's a lot of decent people who probably get assaulted via lawyers being used, you know.
Some attorneys, whether they know it or not, are helping gangsters set up hits, drug deals, and other prison gang business by forwarding mail. Sometimes the crooks just hijack the lawyer's name on a fake letterhead. In any event, gang investigator Hawks says the only way we will bring down the prison gangs is by shutting off their communications. The Short Quarter, he says, is a step in the right direction. But people here on the outside need to know when they help an inmate with gang-related communications, they're helping propagate organized crime. Chris Blatchford.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Hope y'all had a blessed day. Really quick, though, before we jump into this video, if you could, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. It truly does help the continued growth of this channel. 2025 has been the best year for this channel. I know I've only been around for a couple years, but still, 2025 has just been a great year, and that's truly because of each and every one of you. So thank you for the continued support. All right, so we covered Daniel Grajeda yesterday. Today, we're going to be covering his twin brother, Thomas Wino Grajeda. We're going to start with our favorite social media page, Prison Chronicles. We're going to start with their post on him. Then we're going to be reading from an article about those solicitation for murders that we talked about in the intro. We also did some digging. He has a son, Thomas Grajeda Jr. They call him Little Wino. I found he got convicted of an attempted murder in the early 2000s. There was an appeal he filed in like 05, 06, and we're going to be reading from a piece of that appeal that mentions his dad. And then, if you didn't notice in the intro, the picture there with him and Martin Evil Madrigal, who we've covered on this channel a couple times, another pretty infamous Mexican Mafia member who ended up getting killed, they believe, in, I think it was in Baja California, or he was in Mexico. I got to go back and check. But regardless, Grajeda, Thomas Wino Grajeda, sent him threatening letters. It's kind of interesting to read that. And I'll say this before we jump into it. Martin Evil Madrigal does not seem like a guy that's received a lot of threats. I mean, obviously he ended up being killed, but I'm talking about amongst his peers. I mean, amongst his fellow MA members. Doesn't seem like somebody who would catch a lot of heat, but Grajeda, man, you can tell when we get into it, you'll see he kind of went right at him. But first, let's start with this Prison Chronicles post. Thomas Wino Grajeda from Torrance, California, Daniel Grajeda's twin brother. Wino is a member of the Mexican Mafia and associated with the Rana gang. 2003, he was found guilty of 3 counts of soliciting fellow inmates at California State Prison, Corcoran, to commit murder. His conviction was primarily based on inmate testimony in prison notes, or kites, that he allegedly wrote to order the killings of fellow inmates. A fellow inmate, Danny Smokey Figueroa, testified that Grajeda wrote him notes or kites ordering the murders of 2 other inmates, Alfredo Yogi Martinez and Ray Veneno Martinez, and those were not related. Figueroa also claimed that Grajeda verbally confirmed these solicitations in the prison yard. So not only did he write him, he told him in person. Another inmate, Jaime Wicked Munoz, was allegedly solicited to murder inmate Stevie Gonzalez. The defense of Grajeda maintained his innocence, arguing that the notes were forged by Figueroa and Munoz, who were trying to curry favor with prison officials to improve their own situations, such as being moved back to General Pop, because these guys were in max security wings, very limited movement, 23-in-1 situations, probably getting 1 shower a week. Not as good as GP. Munoz even testified that he had at times forged Grajeda's writing to have more credibility. The defense also brought in other inmates who testified that the specific lingo used in the notes was open to various interpretations and not necessarily related to murder. Ultimately, though, the jury believed the prosecutor's evidence and the testimony of the primary inmate witness, leading to Grajeda's conviction. He got 75 to life in prison for the 3 counts. However, like we talked about with his brother Daniel, Wino will spend the rest of his life in prison. And after all that loyalty, and Prison Chronicles says, in the end, after a lifetime of loyalty, Wino will spend the rest of his life in prison. And as he was placed on the hit list, he will forever have to live in fear from those he once called his brothers. And those are big, big facts. And I guess, you know what? We're going to start with a little side note I found about his son. He has a son, Thomas Grajeda Jr. He gets convicted of attempted murder when back in September of 2005, he shot a man in the chest after an argument outside of a motel. Basically, the gist of it is the guy and Grajeda Jr. they're arguing. Grajeda Jr. thinks he went into the room to maybe steal stuff, and Grajeda Jr.'s, the woman he was with, was in there as well. Well, the guy comes out, Grajeda Jr.'s woman's in the car, Grajeda Jr. confronts him, and the guy is telling him, I didn't do this. I didn't go in your room. I don't know what you're talking about. And he turns around and yells kind of at the woman, did I go in the room? Did I say anything to you? And I mean, I feel like she had the opportunity right then and there to be like, no, he didn't. She didn't say anything. She basically just ignored what he said. Well, when he turned back around, Grajeda Jr. had pulled a gun on him, shot him in the chest. The couple dipped. The guy did survive. And Grajeda Jr. was ultimately found guilty. They talked about, excuse me, guys. No AI here, man. Straight recording. Sorry, I just got off work. Looks like 10 hours. They talked about how Grajeda is a Soreño, different tattoos on his chest, but then it went into who his dad was, okay? And their very upstandingness within the Mexican Mafia. And even though they were deemed, disregard status, just the weight that the Grajeda family carried. So they have Thomas Wino Grajeda's son, and they're talking about in the appeal, just the massive amount of gang ties, the massive amount of connections, and just the interlinking and everything that goes on when you have someone with that last name. But I thought that was interesting. He has a son, same name, and they even called him Little Wino on the street. Okay, this is his guilty verdict. That was in December of 2003. We started with the intro, but we're going to read the whole thing. After a little more than a day of deliberation, a jury found an alleged high-ranking member of the Mexican Mafia guilty of solicitation of murder. 5:05 p.m. Friday, jurors returned from deliberation. A court clerk read the verdicts that found Thomas Wino Grajeda, 52 at the time, guilty of 3 counts of soliciting California State Prison Corcoran inmates to commit murder for him. 03 was 52, so now he's going to be, almost 75. That's crazy. The jurors, who began deliberating shortly after 4:30 p.m. Thursday, asked to have testimonies reread and had come back once during the day Friday to let the court judge know that they had decided on 2 verdicts, but were hung on the 3rd. Court officials said Judge Peter M. Schultz asked the jurors to return to deliberation on the 3rd count. Ultimately, they agreed. As the clerk read the guilty verdicts, Grajeda, who faces a max of 75 to life, looked down and shook his head. His attorney, James B. Oliver, said per Grajeda's request, an appeal will be filed. His attorney said it is hard to battle charges when one is labeled as a prison gang member. Well, I mean, you are, but I get it. Our impression, because of the prejudice against prison gangs, it was an uphill battle to fight, Oliver said. Quote, but that doesn't mean the verdict was unfair. We believe Mr. Grajeda had a fair trial. The evidence was very incriminating. Throughout the course of the approximately 4-day trial, several inmates, prison officials, and a document expert testified. Prosecution maintained that Grajeda solicited Corcoran inmate Danny Smokey Figueroa to murder fellow inmates Alfredo Yogi Martinez and Ray Veneno Martinez, and solicited Jaime Wicked Munoz to murder inmate Stevie Gonzalez. The defense said, nope, those were forged. I didn't do that. And Figueroa and Munoz were just trying to basically throw him to the wolves by saying, hey, man, look what he's writing. Look what he wants us to deliver. He's trying to order these murders. If we give you this information, can you put us back in GP? Because remember, they're all in Max Shoe security housings together, okay? Deputy District Attorneys plead with the verdicts. What was interesting, though, okay, he was almost out. He was almost done serving his sentence, okay? So this is what it reads. Grajeda, who has multiple armed robbery and assault charges in his criminal history, was serving time in Corcoran on drug-related charges prior to being charged with solicitation of murder. The district attorney's office officials have said he was finished serving his sentence when he was arrested for the soliciting murder charges in June of 2002. So he was done. He was about to hit the gates, man. He was about to be out. And it said if he were to have been acquitted on all counts, he would have been a free man without any parole supervision. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Okay, and was digging around. Came across this article. Martin Evil Madrigal, he was a fugitive Mexican Mafia member. He controlled the gangs in Ventura County from a base in Mexico. So he dipped to Mex, right? Which a lot of Mexican Mafia guys do. But this is the one thing I feel like learned on my own reading through some of these guys that go to Mex. I just covered one. I forgot his name. I just covered one. They said they found him hanging from a bridge like 20 years later. He dipped. He was supposed to be sentenced to prison, turn himself in, and he dipped. He got away for like 20 years. He had a good run. Cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Leave a comment right now. I know you guys know who I'm talking about. Leave a comment. But anyway, Martin Evil Madrigal, he's a fugitive Mexican Mafia member, big dog, big time shot caller, was controlling gangs in Ventura County. And a lot of his details on his death remained scarce. Okay. He was 53 at the time when he was killed. He got deported in 2006 after serving a 6-year federal prison term. Madrigal, nicknamed Evil, was known to travel between Tijuana, Rosarito, and Ensenada in Baja California, the sources said. Under indictment in the United States on drug trafficking charges and subject to extradition, Madrigal was twice released from Mexican custody under circumstances that are not clear. He operated with a shadowy world where Mexican drug cartels rubbed shoulders with uprooted California gang members. Some are fugitives from justice, while others were deported to a country they hardly remember after growing up in the U.S. serving prison times. Okay? Trafficked meth, heroin, all that. 6 months before his death, Madrigal was arrested in Rosarito. Mexican authorities said he and his 9-man entourage were riding in the bed of a pickup truck carrying military-grade weapons. Raised on the east side of Oxnard, Madrigal came up in the Colonia Chicas gang before being inducted into the Mexican Mafia in the early 2000s, said Leo Duarte, a retired state prisons official. However, he became a made member, and another thing I've come to find out is these people are just human, so they have egos, and a lot of them have very big egos. A lot of them get a God complex, and Madrigal seems like he got that. Quote, he thought he was all that and a bag of chips, Duarte recalled. His outsized ego rubbed many Mexican Mafia members the wrong way. One was our guy, Thomas Wino Grajeda, who mailed a letter to Madrigal that began with, "Órale, Martin, just these few lines your way, hoping that they find you well, considering that things have somewhat gone to your head." In the letter obtained by the Times, Grajeda rebuked Madrigal for what he considered to be abuses of his newfound authority. Quote, "Keep in mind," Grajeda signed off. This is like, kind of gave you chills. This is what Grajeda told Madrigal. "You make your bed in life, or the life we live, then sleep on it. I don't want to hear no crying later on." That's crazy, man. That's absolutely crazy. We're going to leave it with that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time. Peace.